Hello, welcome to my channel AH News Live, where we sit and do an analysis of the hot headlines that have been going on. We've got two papers from Saturday the 5th of December. We're going to be analysing the Sun, the headline Super Saturday, and also Daily Express, £10 billion bounce back at shops, which is just here. I thought we'd start off with the Sun today, because I thought this first article would be interesting. Over the weekend, we saw thousands of people going to retail stores doing shopping. So, Super Saturday. A £1.5 billion spending spree in hard-hit pubs and shops today will help to kick-start Britain's battered economy. Super Saturday drinkers will raise a glass to the COVID jab, while Christmas shoppers enjoy price cuts of up to 80% in stores. The boost comes on the first non-working day since lockdown ended. The Campaign for Real Ale's Tom Stainer said, "The Great British Pub needs the Great British public in its hour of need." So we're going to continue this article on page 8. High streets will be the busiest they have been all year today as the NHS prepares to take delivery of 2 million vaccine doses by the end of next week. Shoppers are expected back in huge numbers on the first weekend following a month of lockdown. Stores eager to shed stock are offering mega deals including up to 80% off. Around £1.5 billion will be spent in stores today, data suggests. More than 300,000 people are due in London's West End, 150,000 at Birmingham's Boring and 120,000 at Manchester's Trafford Centre. Retail chiefs urge them to shop responsibly with extended opening hours, giving more time and opportunity to socially distance. They also have stressed that every pound spent protects jobs and support local communities. Meanwhile, 1 million more vaccine doses are now scheduled for delivery next week, taking the total to more than 2 million. With each person requiring 2 shots, it means enough doses for 1 million Brits. The NHS starts vaccinations on Tuesday from 50 hospital hubs and will need time to get up to speed. Staff at University Hospital Coventry ran through the drill yesterday. The NHS expects to reach tens of thousands of people in the first week, including patients aged over 80 already in hospital. Some care home workers will be invited for a jab, and remaining stock will be offered to NHS staff at the end of each day. A source said there will be enough COVID vaccines in the country next week to give around 1 million people 2 doses each. Even more will arrive before the end of next year. It is down to the NHS to start getting needles into arms as quickly as possible. 2 in 3 Brits are now happy to shop in the store. A Centre for Retail Research study showed. The Centre's Professor Joshua Bamfield said, "People will spend as they want to end a miserable year in a memorable way. The determination to have a good Christmas can outweigh COVID concerns and dented consumer confidence." Helen Dickinson, boss of British Retail Consortium, added, "Retailers are offering discounts, extending opening hours, and looking at other ways to create an enjoyable shopping experience. Everyone can shop in the knowledge that every purchase we make is a retailer helped, a job protected, and a local community supported. Experts say the return to high streets will be helped by fatigue at purchasing over the net." Market research firm Ipsos found shoppers buying online have become stressed and are no longer enjoying the experience. Ipsos's Tim Dennison said, "Even 3 in 10 of the young people we assume do everything online prefer in-store experience. Yep, me included." Today also marks Small Business Saturday. Last year, events saw a record 18 million people spend £800 million at local cafes, pet shops, toy stores and gift shops. The call to shop and eat small is more vital than ever this year. Almost half of independent retailers say pre-Christmas take-ins will decide if they survive. Yesterday, the UK's chief medical officers wrote to NHS staff warning of an especially hard winter and praised them for their magnificent work. They said vaccines mean Brits can look to 2021 with greater optimism, but they are only likely to have a marginal impact this year. They added deploying vaccines safely, rapidly, and in a sequence which is most likely to reduce mortality and morbidity is going to be a very considerable logistical exercise for all of us. Meanwhile, shops gutted by the pandemic will soon be transformed into vaccine centres. I thought that was a good idea. The NHS has rented a large unit at Westfield Stratford City, East London, and is eyeing up 700 shuttered shops nationwide. Retail staff who recently lost jobs are being invited to apply for roles administering the vaccines. Kyle Monk of the British Retail Consortium said, setting up vaccine centres and empty units will help bring much needed footfall to local high streets. Retailers have spent hundreds of millions on making retail COVID secure, but this initiative could give shopping locations an active role in ending this pandemic once and for all. The Pfizer vaccine, which must be kept at -80 degrees, will require deep freezes with higher power usage, and sources said shopping centres will allow the NHS to install and run this equipment without the risk of blowing fuses, unlike ageing health centres. The NHS is looking for an initial 46 locations, but that number will reach 700 by early next year. Shots may be provided free of cost by landlords, with the NHS just paying business rates. Other leisure venues, sports centres, museums and sports arenas are also being considered. Meanwhile, the NHS has launched job ads for thousands of £1.20 an hour COVID vaccinators. The ads read, "Your NHS needs you. We are looking for staff to join us and help deliver COVID-19 vaccine. Play your part in the vaccination programme. Experience in giving injections is desirable but not essential." NHS England is due to give more details on this vaccine hospital hub shortly. A spokesman added, "This will be a marathon over the coming months, not a sprint. We will keep expanding the programme as we get more vaccines." See, I just think this is really interesting that we've only had this virus around for, well, less than a year, and already we've got a vaccine. We've got all of this stuff is going to be rolled out. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a very good idea that we're going to have all of these places where people can go to get a vaccine. But it's just very interesting that the vaccine's literally just become available. We've only got 2 million vaccines available, and yet the high streets are really, really busy. But I guess this is a good opportunity for these stores. £1.5 billion is a lot, but I guess they need it. I mean, they have had a tough year, so I guess the more places that vaccines will be available, the better, because obviously that means more people will be able to go out and have more confidence in shopping, because they know they'd probably be able to get the vaccine and just go out shopping straight away. So Westfield Stratford is a big place. You know, these companies, they're losing a lot of money, and it's a massive shame because, you know, these companies that are going have been with us for decades. Percy Ingle is an example. These companies, they need to just do whatever they can to try and get their profits and their income and their revenue up as much as they possibly can. And they're having to take these measures and do whatever they can because this is the thing, isn't it? But yet the government seem to be putting these cheer systems in place, getting it all wrong, allowing places in certain parts to be open, even though they've got higher rates of infection. I mean, last week when I spoke about Stratford-upon-Avon with lower rates of infection, with other places in that region with higher rates of infection, but they were in the highest tier, which really doesn't make much sense. And I just think it's really unfair that the vaccine's all good news, yes, but why are these companies having such a difficult time? Simply because the government can't work out what they need to. Kids to bed, it's a Primark party ahead. Mums who want to socialise in small groups when their kids are in bed are behind a phenomenal late night demand at Primark. Queues built around the clock at the retail giant as it stayed open more than 24 hours when trading resumed on Wednesday after lockdown. The chain's owner, ABF, says yesterday sales are well up year on year as mums go Christmas shopping. They are also way stronger than after the first lockdown when Primark rang up $2 billion at the tills. John Bason, head of finance at ABF, explained this is social. It's about experience and celebrating Christmas. At 11 and 12 at night, we're seeing lots of mums in small groups enjoying Primark at leisure. The surge makes up for the hit Primark took as non-essential shops were shut in the second lockdown, costing ABF $430 million. Late opening will now be extended at some stores in the run-up to Christmas. Profits at Primark are on track to be better than last year's, Lidl and Pets at Home are the latest essential retailers to hand back millions in business rates relief. And that's actually true because, again, Pets at Home, they're getting a lot more sales now because people want to go and buy for their pets, don't they? So it's amazing, isn't it, how the things that these companies are having to do, you know, to make sure that they can keep their business afloat and make sure that they're not having to lay off loads of people, to have to keep their store open literally 24 hours. They have to do everything they can. But, you know, at the same time, the vaccine's here. I'm actually filming this video on the same day that we've seen the first person in the world to receive a vaccine for COVID-19. So that really is a step in the right direction. Vaccine from home. London's deputy mayor has been caught on camera eating his earwax in a public meeting. Labour's Jules Pipe CBE 55 shocked viewers when he used his specs arm to scoop out the gunge. He then sniffed his find before licking it. Mr. Pipe, on $132,000 a year, apparently forgot he was on a Microsoft Teams call for the Thursday's virtual London Assembly meeting. He dug in with his finger before using his glasses. London Mayor Sadiq Khan, far right, was one of those who reacted before the link was turned off, with the footage later blocked online. An unnamed 34-year-old resident of Bethnal Green, East London, said it was disgusting. There must have been a few hundred people tuned in. Sadiq was on the call and looked angry when he saw it. Jules must have thought the camera was off. It was animalistic. A source close to Tory mayoral candidate Sean Bailey called it repulsive. But Mr. Pipe below, left, said my eczema can result in excruciating itching in my ear. As deputy mayor for planning, he was involved in Thursday's meeting over the controversial £800 million Bishopgate goods yard scheme for 500 homes. I understand you can have eczema, but what's your excuse, mate, for digging your flipping arm with your glasses into your ear and eating your own earwax? It's just nasty. That's the bottom line. Stat skips trip. A lorry was driven through a town with two full wobbly skips stacked on top of each other. The truck was spotted making its way with its precarious load along residential streets. At one point, the driver lowered one skip to avoid a bridge, then drove along with it swinging off the back. Witness Martin Richmond, 56, said it was like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It could have crushed someone to death. Great Harwood Skip Hire, which owns the skips, refused to comment about the incident in Blackburn. The things that people do these days, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? Like the things that people are able to get away with, the things that people do, the ludicrous things that people do these days, it's just like, what on earth? Where are the boundaries, man? People seem to just get away with whatever they like. Two more stories, I believe, and then we will move on to the Daily Express. 30 mum things. Only half have kids before milestone birthday. Only half of women are now mums by the age of 30, figures show. And the number of those having children earlier than that is at record lows. The Office of National Statistics said 49% of girls born in 1989 were childless when they turned 30 last year. This is up from 38% in their mum's generation and 21% in their grands. Experts say women are delaying parenthood to go to university and pursue their careers. It is also harder to get on the property ladder to provide a stable family home. Catherine O'Brien of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service said, "We know many women would prefer to start a family at an earlier age but feel unable to for a number of reasons. This includes the higher cost of childcare and how hard it is for couples to get their first home." But she said there are positive reasons, adding many women want higher levels of education and to establish their career before starting their family. Women born in 1974 who completed their childbearing in 2019 had 1.92 children on average, the Office of National Statistics figures show. The most common age for childbirth for these women was 31. Last year, 18% turned 45, having had no children, and 37% had two, making it the most common family size. Miss O'Brien added, with the economic uncertainty caused by the COVID pandemic, it is likely the average age of motherhood will continue to increase. Well, that's very interesting. Very interesting. But at the same time, things are so different. Things are so different. Like the other generations before that generation, well, from what I hear, the way I heard it, never actually had the opportunity to go to university, or university certainly wasn't as big as a thing as it is now. So if they have got more opportunities to go and pursue their career, why shouldn't they? But at the same time, why should they be held back because of the way that the world is at the moment? You know, it is really tough, and it's just a massive shame that these people might not want to start their own family, because I think it was only the last analysis where I actually spoke about people not wanting to have children due to climate change. There's so many different reasons for people to say, oh, I don't want to have kids, you know. But this one is I suppose, valid. There are more opportunities. There are more things for you to do. The world is literally your oyster at this point in time, or for us. And I don't see why we should have to force ourselves to settle down and do things that we don't want to. If we want to live our life and we want to do stuff, then let's do it. Why have we got to force ourselves to settle down and get married and have kids by a certain age? There really is no need. But at the same time, I feel like the option should be there, and you shouldn't feel like you're sort of suppressed in a way because you haven't got the funds to get on the property ladder or for childcare. It's just not good. Flakey wakey. Millions woke to a white winter yesterday, that being Friday, as snow settled across the country. But the flakes forced police to warn motorists to slow down. And in Scotland, many were jolted awake by loud bangs which were caused by thundersnow, a phenomenon when thunder and lightning combine a heavy snowstorm. The North, Midlands, Wales, East of England, South West and parts of the South East all had overnight snow. Another 2 inches was predicted to settle on higher ground last night as people were urged to take care. In Devon and Cornwall, police hit out at some drivers as the treacherous conditions led to accidents. Roads on Dartmoor and Exmoor were the worst affected, and a police spokesman said crazy people are still tearing along like there's no tomorrow, which there might not be for them if they crash and kill themselves. The trouble is, if they cause an accident, it could seriously injure or kill innocent people too. Drivers should slow down and take heed of the conditions. In Kirkcaldy, Fife, thundersnow blasts at 4 a.m. triggered car alarms. Police Scotland said, please do not be alarmed, we are currently experiencing thunder and lightning. The Met Office has issued warnings for snow and rain in London, the South East and East, but many parts will be drier and brighter. Temperatures are expected to drop as low as -3 degrees Celsius today and -5 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Met Office meteorologist Aidan McGivern said yesterday saw an awkward mixture of cold rain, sleet and falling snow. Well, it's certainly a very early time of year to get snow. We don't normally get snow until about January, February, even March time, but we got it very early this year. This really has been an unusual year, hasn't it? It makes me think, what is everyone going to be doing on the 31st of December? Like, what is everyone going to be doing? Is people going to be celebrating the same way? Because I think this is the weirdest year. I was only saying to my mum, actually, it's just very weird. I feel like I haven't actually been able to adapt to this year at all. Like, normally, you know, when you see the year at the start of the year, you it's kind of awkward to write down, isn't it? Looks a bit strained on paper. But for me, this whole year, the year 2020 has just looked unusual. And actually, it's followed by unusual events. But yeah, it's just been really strange, hasn't it? Not positive, but at the same time, just strange. Weird, but I've never seen a year or felt a year that's gone by so quickly, because it hasn't gone quicker, but it just feels like it's flown by. And I'm thinking, why is that? But it's probably because so much has happened. There's been so much to talk about, so many new things, that it's just flown. There's always been something going on this year, something to keep us occupied. So, you know, what can you expect really? But I do hope that 2021 has more to offer, and I am feeling very optimistic about 2021. Very optimistic, I must say. But as I said in the last video, don't hold your breath, because you really don't know what the government are or have in store for you next. Right, the Daily Express, £10 billion bounce back at shots. Right, I'm not going to touch that again because we have discussed that in The Sun just now. We've also spoken about the snow. Let's go to the next thing I've highlighted. Brexit. Britain and EU poles apart in trade talks. Brexit trade talks hit a brick wall last night as negotiators walked away, admitting they are still poles apart. Boris Johnson will step in today in the hope he can break the deadlock in crisis talks with Eurocrat Ursula von der Leyen. Number 10 stressed there is little time to save the negotiations as the prospect of no deal loomed closer. But top officials admitted last night that significant divergences remain despite a week of intense talks. In a joint statement, Lord Frost and EU counterpart Michel Barnier laid the bare deep divisions. They said, after 1 week of intense negotiations in London, we agreed today that the conditions for an agreement are not met due to significant divergences on level playing field, governance and fisheries. The talks have now been put on pause while Mr Johnson and Miss von der Leyen are briefed by their teams before they speak later. The Prime Minister and European Commission President will speak this evening after a rocky 48 hours in the negotiations. Lord Frost and Mr Barnier spent yesterday scrambling to save the trade talks after French interference halted progress. Insiders said it will be a genuine challenge to make a breakthrough, and vital discussions are now 2 days behind. Mr Barnier's attempts to appease France by making extra demands in the negotiations pulled us back, just as a potential landing zone for a deal had emerged, according to the UK source. Downing Street said the talks remain a very difficult point and warned time is in very short supply. A number 10 spokesman said, "We are committed to working hard to try and reach an agreement with the EU. For a deal with the EU to be possible, it must fully respect UK sovereignty that includes controlling our borders, deciding on a robust and principled subsidy control system, and controlling our fishing waters. Negotiators believe a deal must be struck this weekend in order to have it in place before transition arrangements end on December 31st. But the talks were thrown off course on Thursday after the EU put new demands on negotiating table after French fears over rules on state aid subsidies. But Angela Merkel last night insisted the EU would have to give more ground in order to clinch an agreement. The German Chancellor's spokesman said the bloc should be ready to compromise as time runs out. What are we running out of time for, though? We're running out of time because you want to discuss fisheries. Fish. To be quite honest, I've never had problems buying fish. I don't know about you guys, but I've never had a problem buying fish. Why are we negotiating and talking about fish? This is the thing, isn't it? They just pick at anything. Any little thing. It's ridiculous. Right, this is a very controversial thing. Battling to keep Britain safe. Priti, the new Iron Lady. Now we can see why the Labour Party and its left-wing fellow travellers tried so very hard to get rid of Priti Patel. The Home Secretary has characteristically refused to buckle in the face of leftist onslaught designed to dismantle essential parts of this country's immigration controls. Indeed, she has even had the audacity to embark on a counter-attack. At stake is the right of the Home Office, and indeed its duty to protect the public by deporting foreign criminals to their country of origin once they have served prison sentences. One such deportation flight involving Jamaican nationals went ahead this week. despite last-minute legal challenges cutting the numbers removed by 2/3. The flight was a cause of outrage for many Labour MPs. Their complaint was not that it was insufficient and that many more overseas criminals should also be removed before they have the chance to perpetuate further crimes against constituents, but just the opposite. Scores of Labour MPs, backed by leading Liberal Democrats, decided that the deportations were an outrageous infringement of the rights of the criminals concerned, including killers, rapists, and drug dealers. Labour even suggested that carrying out the expulsions would amount to a repeat of the Windrush scandal, which involved many law-abiding immigrants from the Caribbean being wrongly threatened with deportation and in some cases actually removed from the UK. To use that appalling injustice as grounds for seeking a de facto right for foreign criminals to stay in Britain is a flagrant insult to its victims. Indeed it is. But Labour MPs did just that when sending a letter to Ms Patel that claimed planning a pre-Christmas mass deportation flight demonstrates that the Home Office has so far failed to learn any lessons. We must not see a repeat of the actions that led to members of the Windrush generation being so unjustly mistreated. The letter also alleged that institutionalised racism was at work. The letter followed a similarly fatuous missive supported by celebrities such as the model Naomi Campbell and the actress Thandie Newton, which cited concern about systemic racism. In a Commons debate on Monday, Labour MP after Labour MP spoke against the deportations. Diane Abbott even described some of the criminals involved as vulnerable, while fellow backbencher Kim Johnson said the move was obscene and irresponsible. The good news is that while a less determined and gutsy Home Secretary might have buckled before this display of politically correct nonsense, Ms Patel is having none of it. The Windrush scandal is a stain on our country's history. That generation made an enormous contribution to our country and were wronged by successive governments. To see ill-informed Labour politicians and do-gooding celebrities attempting to conflate the victims of Windrush with these vile criminals set for deportation is not only misjudged and upsetting but deeply offensive, she later said. And far from the deportation of foreign criminals being a policy that disproportionately hits black people, ministers have revealed that the majority of those removed over the last year have been European, with only 33 being Jamaicans. At the heart of this dispute is a basic values divide. Labour under Keir Starmer, as much as Jeremy Corbyn before him, has turned its back on the patriotic origins and no longer acknowledges that protection of citizens is the first duty of the state. Instead, it has become fixated on the trendy notion of global citizenship, with many of its MPs wishing for a world without borders and no longer supporting the basic concept of the nation state. Starmer himself has not uttered a word about his affair, but has allowed frontbenchers such as Starmer himself has not uttered a word about this affair, but has allowed frontbenchers such as his immigration spokeswoman Holly Lynch to allege parallels between the deportations and the Windrush scandal. Meanwhile, Ms Patel has revealed she plans to bring in legislation in the new year to ban any foreign national convicted of rape or homicide from using the asylum system as a means of staying in Britain. Some of the Jamaican criminals who got themselves off the plane back to Kingston this week via 11th hour appeals did so by lodging asylum claims, knowing that ensuing legal process is likely to take many months. With Labour so far removed from the common sense priorities of the electorate, we are fortunate to have the gutsy Miss Patel battling for Britain. How can you compare criminals who have done crimes such as murder, rape, and drug dealing to innocent citizens who wrongly got sent and deported to another country? How can you make that comparison? Me personally, I don't actually give a monkeys, to be quite honest. They don't make a difference to my life. They are criminals. Either way, whether you're locked up here or locked up there, it doesn't really make a difference to me. But to be honest, I don't really see why this is controversial. If you have committed a crime, does it matter where you go to serve your time? Does it matter whether you're here or whether you're in Jamaica? No. But does that give you the right to compare these criminals, who are criminals, to innocent citizens that were law-abiding, as this article just stated? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't make a difference to me. That's the honest, my honest opinion is it doesn't make a difference to me. I think some people go, oh well, they don't know their country. They came from when they was a child. Yeah, they come from when they was a child. Yeah, but they broke the law. They're not law abiding, and they haven't done little petty laws. They've made big laws. They've raped. They've killed. They've sold drugs. So no. It doesn't really matter, does it? I don't see why people really care, to be quite honest. I certainly don't. Moving on. Trauma of policing killed my dad. Don't let this happen again. The daughters of a police officer who killed himself have urged Scotland Yard bosses to save the nation's superheroes. The family of Metropolitan Police Officer Ram Kumar launched a campaign yesterday for better care of officers. An inquest heard by PC Kumar, 55, was found hanged by his 91-year-old mother last year. He had complained to colleagues about anxiety and stress, but it became worse when he was moved to a desk job. PC Kumar's daughters, Monica, 28, and Natasha, 26, said, in my dad's words, he said, they, police officers, are expected to be superheroes, but who helps them when they're not feeling at their best? To the Metropolitan Police here today, to the head of mental health, you have the power to make a difference to the lives of so many officers. The inquest in Hatfield heard divorced PC Kumar was living with his mother when he began to feel isolated and depressed. He contacted his line manager with concerns about his mental health, including the trauma of experiencing sudden death crime scenes. Within days, PC Kumar of St Albans was given work inside the police station to avoid stressful situations under the Met's Blue Light Champions initiative. Met Superintendent Mark Lawrence told the inquest, I have not been able to find any gaps where we could have done something differently or in a different way. Recording a suicide verdict, Senior Coroner Geoffrey Sullivan said he was satisfied the actions were taken in his best interests. After the hearing, Natasha said of her father, he was so passionate and so proud to be a police officer. He just loved being out and about. I understood that they have something in place for people that are struggling with mental health, but I feel every person is completely different. From speaking to him, there didn't seem like there was light at the end of the tunnel. So he did actually tell the force he didn't want to do it, and yes, okay, they gave him a desk job, but the bottom line is they didn't do enough. That doesn't really resolve the problem, does it? Some people, they need help. It's not just a matter of, oh, all right, then we'll just move you. That could have scarred, and clearly did, those events, those cases with those sudden deaths clearly scarred this police officer, and moving him to another department, okay, yeah, that's fine, but he needed more help than that. And to say, oh, there's nothing else we could have done, it's just like, well, it's like people just don't have any common sense, do they? It's bloody common sense. It is common sense. Someone actually lost their life, and you're saying you couldn't have done anything else. I mean, can't imagine how enraged these two girls must be. I'd be enraged. Furious. Mental health is serious. Very serious, and so it's just how much more can you really put something in someone's face for you to and, you know, they made action, or we done something. That's basically what we're saying, isn't it? We done something. What else could we have done? You see someone lying unconscious in the street, what do? Do you call the local GP or do you call an ambulance? You know? I think that rounds up this week's newspaper analysis, I believe. I think I'm going to see if we can end this analysis on a positive note. See, I've got an article here by Richard and Judy, and I want to read it, but it's COVID related, but it's quite funny. So I think I'm gonna conclude this week's analysis with this article, because it did make me laugh, because it's so relatable, and all of you will be able to remember that sad teacher you had at school. You know, the one that slowly but surely lost control of the classroom. Authority slipping away day by day, week by week, until they were a hopeless, babbling wreck, fear in their eyes and uncertainty in their voice. You almost felt sorry for them as you chucked your paper darts, arm wrestled your neighbour and chatted noisily with a mate sitting 5 desks away. The government is increasingly like that teacher. Our early obedience over COVID is evaporating. As I wrote here the other week, this second lockdown was a national pretend lockdown. A detention where half the class didn't show up. Shops that shut during the first lockdown stayed stubbornly open. Millions made plainly non-essential journeys. The roads were jammed, parks were packed, and high streets thronged. Less a lockdown, more a great escape. I say government, I mean Michael Gove. What's happened to him? How did this intelligent, sharp, acutely expressed former journalist... Gove was a newspaperman, a reporter of BBC TV, and latterly assistant editor of The Times. His wife is a formidable newspaper columnist. Turn into this apology for a communicator. My jaw hit the carpet last week when I read Gove's latest ludicrous lecture to the misbehaving class. Desperate threats, just like that flailing teacher. Every hospital in England would be overwhelmed if rebellious MPs didn't get behind the tier system, a system that was grimly, inevitably necessary. How we laughed at the back of the class. Overwhelmed? Really? With coronavirus cases steadily dropping and hospital ICUs quieter than this time last year. Come on, sir. Inevitably, seriously. Thanet catches a COVID cold, so the whole of Kent has to effectively quarantine. Pubs, restaurants, the whole infrastructure of local communities and economies smashed by pointless draconian restrictions. Do us a favour, sir. I heard Gove on Talk Radio's breakfast show this week being given a roasting by the inestimable host, Julia Hartley-Brewer, challenging him on the nonsense over restrictions on pubs in Tier 2. They can serve drinks, but only to patrons sitting down to a meal. She asked him if he understands that most people in pubs sit down anyway these days, meal or not. Quite how would the virus distinguish between diners and non-diners? Faced with burbling non-answers, Hartley-Brewer suggested that Gove might not have seen the inside of a pub for some time. He claimed to have watched a soccer match in one recently, but declined to name the hostelry in question. Even the headmaster is wobbling. The PM's authority was shaken as more than 50 of his MPs gave the thumbs down to the new 1 to 3 tier system. Actually, not so much of the 1, Boris has been forced to promise an early review and other compromises. Class is about to be let out for Christmas. Most of them will behave pretty much as they like. After the holidays, I wouldn't bet against that being the new normal. You know, that just absolutely hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what they're like. They had it, and they were managing it. They had everybody listening and everyone following. They messed up. just like it kind of is at the start of a academic year where you have the teacher and you don't really know how they are. Are they going to be the stringent ones where you're going to have to make sure you do all of their homework and don't dare turn up late for their lesson? Or are they the ones where you can just kind of do whatever you like, turn up, be late, don't bother to do your homework, the dog ate my homework and that's the end of it. But they really have messed this up. They really have. And this is a classic example. The only difference is the teacher would actually be able to probably go and get someone more senior to come and have a word with the class. But they don't even have someone who can actually come in and implement anything. They just talk about the scientific advice, don't they? That's their excuse. And from you, that's a very dangerous thing. Very dangerous place to be, by the way. If you have a nation, you're trying to get the nation to follow something in the middle of a pandemic and they can't follow it, or in any emergency, any global emergency for that matter, and most of the population aren't listening to you or isn't going to follow what you're trying to impose, then you are in a very, very bad position, because that's dangerous, very dangerous. So, but it's all their fault really. If they wanted people to follow, then they should have made sure that they made their instructions clear. And while I understand they don't know all the answers, because this is all brand new for them, you need to make sure with what you do know that you're able to articulate yourself and explain the rules that you're expecting people to follow clearly. And then maybe that way you'd have people that would probably be more compliant. But yeah, that will conclude this week's newspaper analysis. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm thinking I'm going to kind of get into a schedule of doing this, whereby maybe it be every Monday or a certain day of the week where I'll probably do a newspaper from earlier on in the week, and I'll kind of cover the headlines that I know probably are current and probably won't really change. And I think with COVID, I've got to be careful about what I do, because obviously things are constantly changing with this virus. So for me to literally daily, so for me to do a COVID article from Saturday, when today's Tuesday, obviously a lot's changed, including the obviously the vaccine rollout as an example that started today. So yeah, we're going to try and get more of a schedule going. But thank you very much for tuning in anyway. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.